hope it is. Yeah, it says live on Facebook. Okay, good.
Good evening and welcome to Wisdom Wednesdays. Apologies for the slight delay. Well, I'd like to introduce you to these amazing ladies. We have Soraya, Selvi, Kamani, Fazana, and Kyra. And we have, with a bit of luck, Amina backstage, prodding and poking us, to do something better. So today's topic is post-COVID-19, changing the trajectory of women's leadership. As you all know, I have a large family and I always delve in there to find a story to tell you guys, because we like to personalize these forums, because in our stories, hopefully we will share with you that anything is possible. My sister, this is a second anniversary teaching online, and she had sent a message early morning saying, guys, 5,027 classes, 5,798 students, and 725 days working. The reason why this is important is she, her husband, and her son were in Africa, and intruders broke into their home in the night, and her husband jumped out of bed to try to, challenge them. And one of them shot him point blank in his head. Well, he survived to tell the story. However, he got very badly injured on one side. The son, who was at university, had to be taken out. So her husband lost his job in a jiffy. The son had to be pulled out of school because my sister was terrified anyway to live there anymore. And she moved back to Sri Lanka. So within a matter of seconds, everything changed. Finances changed. And so my sister, who was in airline management previously, was not working at the time, but she came back here. She taught herself all that she needed to do to sit for all these really hard exams. And she passed out and made herself, became a teacher, and she started teaching English online. I mean, I thought this is the most amazing thing. I told her, I'm so in awe of what you did, because at your age, you changed the trajectory of your life, and you took a bad issue and made good out of it. I mean, ladies, the reason I'm telling you these stories is because everything is so possible. We women have it in us, right? The other story I want to tell you today is my friend and my teammate, Kasturi Chelaraja Wilson, made CEO of Hema's. I mean, how awesome is that, right? This woman, she's multi-talented. She's a super athlete, played for Sri Lanka, plays on my team now in the Masters League. And, she's just this awesome single parent who brought up her sons, built a little annex for her parents, looked after her parents, and still look after her mom. And she does all of this. She's multitasking. I mean, she's up at 5 o'clock in the morning. She's training. She does fitness in the morning before she goes to work. Just imagine, right? So, Kamani, I'm going to share a little clip with you guys. Kamani.
So circumstances is just that my big dream of being this wife and mom and happily married ever after kind of changed when I was 29 and I became a single mom. So I was responsible for my 2 kids, and I was not on a full-time career at that time. I opted to stay and enjoy the moments with my children. So then I chose to become a career woman, just simply to provide for my kids and be the best parent the kids could have. You know, that drive and the purpose of having your kids in the center, and of course the career is used to provide for them, so you're kind of committed to make it work. I have always looked at embracing challenges, right? So you need to figure out whether you can change the circumstances. If you can't, how do you make it work for you? So women, I think, now that I've gone through it, I can look back. We have this inner strength which you don't know. Our moms have it. I saw it from my mom, who brought us up. We wake up at 4 o'clock, go to sleep at 12 o'clock, and she'll put food on the table. She'll do 3 jobs, and she had the strength. And that's the strength we have. Losing financially, being bankrupt, to starting life again with 0 bank balance and having 2 children with no roof, to building your house, to building a career, to making sure your kids have ended up as good human beings. Recently, they put me on that 50A list, and my son sent me a note, and they said all this, that they're proud of me and stuff, but at the end of it, keep going, doing what you're doing, and we are standing right behind you. And I cried so much, because end of the day, somehow that inner girl who had that dream wanted somebody to stand by you and stand alongside you. But now if I know my son stand behind me, I guess I've done something right.
So yeah, I'm super proud of my friend. Like, she's gorgeous, guys, you know. She's really a beautiful human being. So on that note, Fazana is a behavior specialist, as you all probably know. And Fazana's topic for today is corporate perspectives of women. Fazi?
Thank you, Carol. Love the video, great start. So I'd like to touch on a few areas we touched sometime before as well, on corporate role of women. If you take today's statistics of women and men, there are more women doing their levels, there are more women passing out of universities, but there's only 38 to 39% in the workforce. And even in the workforce at senior level, it is dismal. So, I mean, Kasturi, as of late, Carol, we've got some great stories. We have Kasturi, we have Melanie Kanake, who's SIMA Global VP, Sri Lankan again. And we have a female President's Council lawyer, Farzana Jamil. So we do have few women in leadership roles, but I beg to say that it's not enough. So if you look at women, just as we started off with Kasturi's little video, it clearly shows that women do end up playing a dual role as a mother and also a caregiver to her parents, maybe even sometimes your younger siblings and your children. So when this happens, and women also want to have a career, the workplace has to understand this. So Kasturi's potential, Kasturi's capacity was understood by her employers, and I'm sure they gave her that time to be flexible, to manage and balance both. But are all employees like this, is my question. So in a Wall Street Journal Gallup survey, women managers were asked what they consider to be the most serious obstacle in their business careers. Strangely, only 3% cited family responsibilities, but half named reasons related to gender, including male chauvinism, attitude towards a female boss, slow advancement of growth, and the simple fact of being a woman. So how do we post-COVID at least change this? I do see some silver linings in this area, because one of my great pains in my career was to request flexibility, or somewhat of a flexibility for women, so that they can manage this balance that we're talking about. Running a house, because most men in senior roles, what do? I mean, they do a great job, but they wake up in the morning and they're able to just breeze into work. most of the back end is handled by the women, taking their children to school, dropping them, their tuition, even their meals, what to buy. The men may give them money, they may fork out the rupees, but who does the running around and the whole administration of house and children? So imagine a woman having to do both, do what the man does in the office, plus this. A little bit of flexibility would have helped. But flexi time in this country was sort of accepted by very few companies. And I mean, I raise my hand to those companies that did that, but not all took onto it, because we do still have a very traditional management culture. They expect everyone in the office to be seated at their desks at a certain time and leave at a certain time, or even later is fine, but morning they have to be there at that time. But look at post-COVID, which is our topic. Post-COVID, all of us are working from home, including the men. We did that for so long, and most companies, even now, allowing them to do so for their own safety and requesting them to come for meetings or face-to-face meetings or sessions only when needed. And some companies are changing their entire business model to giving away their large spaces and moving to smaller spaces where they can have all the employees working from home and coming for meetings only to a certain location. So now I think it will give a great flexibility. And I've been talking to a lot of men, and they too believe this is the best thing that happened. They say they have time to balance both. Some even have a nap after work, but then after lunch, and then get back to work. And they feel all this allows a great balance. Plus, you do get your work done. All of us have been working really hard and getting a lot of work done while at home. In fact, sometimes we do work more because we are available online anytime. Even at 10 in the night, I found myself doing work. But then you might have that little flexibility in the morning to attend to something a bit more important. So I've been looking at some of the great work done to support women, and one of them is the IFC's She Works project. So She Works is a program that started around, I think, 2018, and they work in countries, many countries, engaging private sector to support women, and they have certain sort of commitments, including we'll have so much percentage of women at board level, we'll have all the women educated, or all men and women educated on gender and inclusivity and on bullying. So they have a lot of mandates. I will share the attachment to report after this on our Facebook. But their main goals are to increase women's business leadership, ensure recruitment and retention of female talent in the workplace, explore employer-supported childcare, which is another important thing, because if women don't have a way to leave their children and come, it's good to have that support in the office, and even employer-supported transport sometimes, and promote effective anti-sexual harassment mechanisms, support women in the value chain as employees and entrepreneurs, and to foster the company's leadership and commitment to women's employment as a smart business strategy. So if these 6 areas are incorporated, I feel the private sector and even the public sector can engage women who are great multitaskers and biologically created that way with more gray matter in their brains to do a great job as well. And a great example is how we started this with Kasturi. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Fazana. Definitely this COVID-19 is absolute time for reflection. And we all know that, right? So some guys take it, some people take it to a better level, and some people use that under cover of which that, you know, they do the wrong thing. So sadly, you know, as I said, you know, these moments come once in a way to help us look inward. And I think it's important to do that. As Fuzzy said, you know, the reason I told you also Marianne's story and Kasturi's story is because it just shows how capable female are and how underutilized females are in this country in that sense, right? If you just relegate them to a kitchen or home affairs, I mean, look at the potential that we haven't harnessed, right? Yeah, so Selvi, as you know, is the CEO of Purnam Foundation, and Selvi has been working very hard to get equal pay and wages for women. Selvi, why women's voices are not heard? Tell us something about that, Selvi.
Thank you, Carol. First of all, let me congratulate you on your video clip, which is very, very impressive, and the story of Mary Ann. And these two examples actually tell us the capacity, the power of women, right? The most important factor in all the women not being able to achieve this position is because they are unaware of this power within them. They do not think that they can do all these feats that all these other few women are achieving. And they think, you know, they are not born for it, they can't do it, it's not, the self-esteem is not there. And there are also several other factors. But why is it that women's leadership is important? It is because of the power that they have. They have power to negotiate and bargain better. You know, they are brilliant mentors. Women are brilliant mentors. They're empathetic. They have emotional intelligence. They have powers and the capabilities and the skills for multitasking. And most importantly, they're used to handling crises at home. So they're very good at handling crises. You know, they work under pressure. They're nurturing. You know, these are all leadership qualities. And they have a good work and life balance. You know, they're not work all the time. They can work, come back home, and then get fully into the housework and the children and their caring and whatever. They're flexible. They're better problem solvers with priority to human lives and environment. You see, this is a very, very, very crucial point, that they solve problems with human lives and environment in their mind, which the men don't. The men's way of deciding and solving problems is actually steered by their ego and their chauvinist or macho image of themselves, you know, their pride. So very often we find that the wrong decisions are taken. I have a story about Prophet Muhammad and the Persian queen who actually said, if Prophet Muhammad and the Islamic army is coming into Persia, I would rather surrender than go to war, because by going to war, I'm only going to kill all my men, and I don't want that. Whereas a man in her place would have said, yes, come for a fight, and we will go for it, you know, that kind of saber rattling and clamoring for victory and blood and whatever. So the women have a different way of dealing with problems. They're collaborative, they focus on teamwork, and people trust women. For some reason, they know that they can trust women. And they're honest and ethical. And another point, which has never been touched in all the surveys about women, is that they are not corruptible. If you see, you know, in a situation, they don't go into bribery and corruption and embezzling money and all that. That's not part of, we cannot say that all women are like that, but it's more or less, women are not corruptible. And so what we see is that if we put women in charge, we have a good governance. We have good governance when women are in charge. But what is it that prevents them? It is only their mental and psychological image of themselves as women and girls and women, where they're supposed to be, you know, docile, subservient, weak, shy, soft-spoken, indecisive, submissive, and scared. You know, in Tamil, they say women should be acham, madam, nanam, payirpu. These are the four main characteristics of women. Acham means what? Scared. Madam means what? Being stupid. Nanam is shy. And payirpu is, you know, not being forward. So all of these are supposed to be standard, you know, characters of women, which we have been brought up with. And how do we get out of it, you know? The second problem is, leadership means taking responsibilities. Women are scared to take responsibilities. It is an innate fear of wanting to take responsibilities because in their homes, the husbands or the brothers and fathers have always been taking the responsibility, and they don't feel that they have the power to take responsibility and take things forward. Now, if you go to political participation, the leadership positions at all levels have to be there, you know, because leadership is actually in so many levels. And if you don't fill up the levels below, the legislative council, the parliamentary positions, those leaderships cannot be filled. It's like filling a glass of water. And if you don't fill the bottom, the top doesn't get filled up. So GAs, Grama Sevakas, DSS, you know, sports, presidents of sports clubs, presidents of, you know, like I'm a member of Otters Club. There is no women in that management for years and years and years. Even now there aren't any. So there should be management positions, leadership positions in these. Finally, I'd like to take about why women are unable to do is because of the intimidation by men. You know that in a political rally, a woman who was going to be contesting was disrobed and she was attacked. And after that, which woman will go? Particularly in Sri Lanka, where any attack on a woman, particularly personal, sexual, or disrobing, is a blur on the honor of the family. So women are unable to go. So these are lots of problems we need to look at if we are going to get women into political participation.
Thank you, Sylvie. Just to clarify, you know, the video clip on CAS was done by Cosmo. I was just borrowing it. Yeah, it was beautifully done, I have to say. You know, Fazli had mentioned it's easier to solve because it's just the culture that needs to be changed. I think that's the hardest thing, Fazli. And Tilak says his mom started a culinary business in 1960s. I mean, how awesome is that, right? 1960s, to be brave enough to think you can go out and do this. Selvi's story is, I mean, so inspiring because Selvi is spot on, right? A lot of the reason why women don't step out is because they've been intimidated psychologically, not in any other overt way, perhaps sometimes that happens, but psychologically to kind of brainwash them to thinking that they are not capable. So, you know, all the things that they do are negated as being real work. You know, it's like the man who says, oh, I go to office and I make the money and I come home. Remember the things the women do at home. There's no way a man can give birth for one. It's such a hard task. And then to bring up these children and do what they do in their homes. So we have to put value to all of this that they do, right? I think we have not put value to the mother who's cooking the meals and, you know, putting it out for you. So I mean, we can start today, and I appeal to the men out there as well, you know, put value to what the women folk do, encourage them to be, to grow to their full potential. I think that's really important, right? Because the man also has to play this big role in ensuring, because that will only mean success of your family. If you push the females to be who they can be, that could only mean success in your family. And to the women out there, girls, you watched those stories previously, you know, you can do it, right? So on that, Soraya, as you know, she's an interfaith leader, she's a lawyer, she works with communities, she's so many things, multi-talented woman, you know, inspires other people to do better. She works across the world, you know, trying to encourage women to be better. Soraya. So Soraya wants to talk about empowering women to be to political leadership, which is what we really have to address, you know. Come to the public arena and play your role as women. Brings me to what Selvi just said, you know, women don't immediately think about going to war. Women think about compromise first. And that's maybe a generalization, but it's a fair generalization, right? So Soraya, tell us about, you know, empowering women to political leadership. You're muted, Soraya.
Thank you so much, Carol, and thank you to our listeners and to the panelists. And Carol, let us not forget to introduce you. In 2019, you, the IOC award, made you gave you an award for women and sports. Am I right? In addition to that, you have built homes for women-led households, and you have relentlessly pursued to bring sports and women's gender justice. And we are totally grateful for that too. And yes, Selvi has very beautifully, and Fazana before that, the psychological impact of women who aspire for leadership is huge. Scientists say now, if one person tells you you're incapable, 15 others have to come to you and take away that negativity. So where do we have that luxury? So the fight for women in this arena of leadership is constant, and it's deep, and it requires a lot of effort. So I want to begin with a little story about a child who had lost his contact lenses and was looking for it under the street light. So while he was looking for a long time and he was not having had any success, some people joined and were looking for it with him, looking for these contact lenses. So one person, very tired and almost ready to give up, asked this boy, hey, where did you drop these contact lenses? And the boy said, oh, I dropped it in the house. Then he asked him, why are you looking for it under the lamppost? Oh, that's where the light is. So this is the kind of thing we are doing with women in politics today in Sri Lanka. 5% of women in parliament, 52% of the women population of Sri Lanka are women. So we have some fundamental flaws that we have to correct if we are going to get women's representation in parliament. To begin with, the party leader decides who gets to run for office, who gets to run. So then obviously you have to be a favorite. Obviously you have to come within a quota. A quota? I mean, it is 2020. In the United States, I work with an organization called Vote, Run, Lead. Our slogan is run as you are. You are worth it. Run as you are. So let's aspire for such a state where our women wake up, they have a passion and a vision and a mission, and they are ready to run for office. So secondly, the qualification. I mean, who are qualified women today? Your father has to be a politician, your brother or your uncle, or somebody has died and you have to fill into these shoes. And this must stop. I have a friend who said she was feeding her newborn baby when she had a call and someone said, hey, I'm coming to sign some form, sign it. So she didn't even know what it was. She signed a form. To see later, she got to know she was nominated to be on the local government. So why? Because she knew somebody who knew somebody. Did she have a vision? Did she have values to run for political office? So we have some fundamental flaws. So in order to correct that, I think we have to take some steps. We have to train, identify, train, recruit women to run for office and make them win. Because when one woman fails, all of us fail. So these are some fundamental flaws. Then what can we do? And I like to put a question to the audience here. How many of you have written a check for a woman's campaign? How many of you have spotted a woman who has these great traits to be a phenomenal leader and scouted her, supported her, and nourished her? I think we have to all take this responsibility very, very personally. Secondly, we have to collectively agitate for change. So it should be an everyday task in our lives. And volunteer to the women who are watching, who have not started to really launch their political career, volunteer as in somebody's office. For instance, Jacinta Ardern, whom we love so much, the New Zealand Prime Minister, she was volunteering for Helen Clark, who is the 37th Prime Minister of New Zealand. So she volunteered. So gain experience, volunteer, because I think my time is up. These are the things. Let's identify the problems and let's take steps to overcome that. Thank you, Carol.
Soraya, on that, I want to ask you something that you said. Yes, the leaders of the party choose. And unless you're a favorite, you can't get in there. And then I suppose, unless you agree to fall into party lines and business as usual, then you won't get that nomination either, correct?
Yeah.
And you know, we are so worldwide, we are so used to this two-party system.
Yeah.
What about the independents? Can you explain that?
So obviously we know who gets the nominations. People who have criminal records today are because they are favorites of their party leader. You know, all rules are broken. This is a real joke, you know. I mean, I sometimes feel so sad that we have to even address these faulty lines and foundational challenges, which are perpetuated by parties and politicians who are senior politicians. So this has to change. A fundamental criteria should be, if you have a criminal record, if you are a case pending, no political office. So we have to make those changes. And of course, in this election coming forward, Carol, we know we have a lot of independent groups who are coming up. And we know some smaller political parties are giving a lot of prominence and place for women candidates. So we need to support that. So when we vote, look out for that party or that leader who supports women's candidacy and vote for that person.
Yeah,
Soraya, Soraya, to your thing, we should also add those people who actually are harmful and for the environment, you know, who are sand mining and who are doing forest cutting, and all of these people also should not be part of the people to be nominated, you know. I think
Very
that
true.
should also be part of it.
Absolutely, I agree.
You know, Selvi, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think this is a subject we need to talk about, guys. You know, we have 17% forest cover in this country, and anything less is absolutely detrimental. And at the moment, to environmentalists and conservationists, as you know, I'm one, it seems like it's like a free-for-all. Anybody grabbing whatever they can, whether they are businessmen, politicians, they are henchmen, whatever you want to say, or family. Everybody seems to be in a free fall here. Guys, you know, this COVID-19 is supposed to make you reflect and bring you back to some kind of what I would like to think is normalcy, right? So this is the uglier side of COVID-19, and lots of good things have happened, as you all know, right? Kamini, Kamini is a gender-based violence specialist. She's a founder and CEO of Shanti Margam. She's my good buddy. I've dragged her into the jungles with me. So Kamini is talking about something very important today. She says, the harder it got, it became more likely that gendered insult would become the political weapon. So true, Kamini.
Thank you, Carol. And yes, so that's a quote by Julia Gillard. She was the former Prime Minister of Australia, and I'll put that in context in a bit. But I also just wanted to touch on some of the things that were said earlier. I mean, we talk about COVID and opportunities, and I think even us getting together as women, Wisdom Wednesdays, was something that came out because of COVID. We could see what was happening, and Soraya and Carol, they brainstormed and decided we need to use this space, this time, to start reaching out to more women and to people to talk about these topics. So I'm just talking about how women can create change in any given moment. And I'm so pleased to be on this panel. And also about how is it that you make men understand the value of women's contributions to the home? And I think the simple thing is hire a maid to do the work that she does. And then you'll find out exactly how much her work costs. Because unfortunately, money is what talks for a lot of people. And that's always been cited as a great example for people to understand the actual value of what women bring to the household. So going back to my topic, I wanted to talk about specifically actually gender-based violence and its impact on women moving forward in various spheres. And I wanted to start with actually the political framework, because it also ties up nicely with what Soraya just spoke of. And we talk of Jacinda, we talk of Angela Merkel, and we've had a lot of fantastic women out there, but what have they faced? What is the sexism and the misogyny that they have had to face while being in these positions of power? And how have men and communities who resort to gender-based violence use various techniques to control and silence women? And I think we have a very own example many years ago in 2013. We remember, or some of you may remember, the sexist comments that the Minister of Transport, Kumara Welgama, made to Rosie Seranayake. And it was disgusting. Today itself, I watched the video again. And Rosie speaks up and she says, look, I'm not comfortable with what's being said, but there was no action that was taken by anyone. And he went on and on, right? With Jacinda, despite everything she achieved, her first media interview was not about her capability. What was she planning for the country? It was about when was she planning to have children, right? And I want to state in this situation, when she started out in her role, Helen Clark, who was the former New Zealand Prime Minister, reached out and tried to support her as well. And going to Julia Gillard, I wonder if any of you have actually seen that very powerful speech she delivered a few years ago in Parliament, where she called out the sexism of Tony Abbott, who was a former Prime Minister of Australia. And just to clarify, between sexism and misogyny, sexism is known to be what serves to rationalize and justify the patriarchal order, while misogyny polices and enforces patriarchal order. So some of the comments that Julia Gillard, for example, heard in her term in Parliament was that she was unfit for leadership because she was deliberately barren, because she didn't have children. Her personal life faced so much scrutiny. A coalition fundraiser made a satirical menu with a dish described as Julia Gillard Kentucky Fried Quail, small breasts, huge thighs, and a big red box. And she was characterized as being unseemly and unduly brutal for a woman. And there were hateful attacks from anonymous critics. A plethora of pornographic and degrading images of the Prime Minister were circulated on the web. And we see this every day in Sri Lanka on social media, like this kind of way of silencing women and ridiculing women, and especially those women who come forward in politics. And what I liked here was when Theresa May came into power as the Prime Minister of England, Julia Gillard wrote a letter to her. And she gave her tips and she advised her on what it is like to be a woman in power and what to be prepared for. And she talks about the tough times in the government. And this is where her quote comes in handy, because she was talking about when things were happening in the government and when she was being criticized, when things were getting very tough. She realized the harder it got, it became more likely that gendered insult would become the political weapon. Wow. And I think that's so important. We hear this in every place. The more powerful women get, and you hear that gendered insult is what comes forward. And sadly, she also, in her letter to Theresa May, she talks about be ready for the rape threats. And this is the reality of what women have to face. And this information is out there in the public because these are public figures and people report on them. And if we come back to Sri Lanka, I spoke about Rosie's situation. I think in the media, social media, we see a lot of things being said about female candidates or women who are people who want to come forward in power. And in public office, for example, you see how women experience so much like they're threatened. In the last local government elections, when there was a quota system, if I talk about the violence aspect, they were threatened, their houses were damaged, they tried to be silenced. Support and financial capital will be held back, so that because women need capital to move forward, as Soraya pointed out. And also, sadly, what happened is after the local government elections, even though women, like there were very strong women who pushed for parties and for parties, when it actually came to the appointments, men chose in a number of instances to select women who were of less power and who would be quiet and who would not challenge them, right? And this happens. So that's, you could maybe in a way call that passive aggressive kind of, trying to silence women, and also the active way of silencing women through violence, through cutting in, speaking on their behalf, interrupting them, and this is what you see at so many levels. And I wanted to also go to the home because, you know, violence is, as we talk about, it is a continuum of violence. Violence starts at home and it comes into communities and societies. And in communities, we find that women who, in their homes, when they are starting to earn money, they sometimes experience gender-based violence from their husbands or partners because their husbands' role in their masculine role as the breadwinner has been challenged. And when you do work on economic empowerment, you actually do focus on male engagement as well. So in COVID, you have seen that there has been an increase on gender-based violence and child abuse in Sri Lanka. And this has brought so much more pressure for women to not engage in communities and societies, because not only do they have to play the double burden, like work from home, as well as look after the family, but also deal with gender-based violence. And a lot of organizations have tried very hard to provide resources, provide online resources. And at the workplace, a World Bank report states that gender discrimination is one of the 3 main reasons in Sri Lanka why we have a very low female labor force participation rate. It's like 36% of women versus 74% of men, I think. A study done in by UNFPA showed that at least 99% of women experience sexual harassment on their way to work. And sometimes that can also be the reason why women choose to leave, or they move to a different location. And even when they're applying for a job, they experience sexual harassment, like a good friend of mine did. At the workplace, you have situations of sexual harassment. It's very complex, and you see that men who are in power do this, and they know that they will never be questioned. And fortunately, we have women who are speaking out. I think the Me Too movement has really created that space for women to speak out. And I think it's really important, and especially women as leaders, if you see it, you really need to take action, and you also need to protect those who come forward with their stories. I think dealing with sexual harassment in the workplace is actually a lot more complex than working with gender-based violence in the home. So I think I want to leave with some positive points. I think listening to or seeing Julia Gillard and Helen Clark, I think it's so clear that women also really need a lot of support from each other. Women have to reach out, support, and give strength to each other. We have to deal with domestic violence. We have to work with men. We have to dismantle and deconstruct and say that violence is a no. And we have to hold men accountable. And we have to create a safe space for women to come out and speak about their issues, especially sexual harassment, because it goes to the core of everyone's being. So these are the key things I wanted to talk about, and we have more time to discuss more of this later on.
You know, Kamini, you referred to political sphere and work sphere and what happens at home. But you know, guys, this is what those who run Women in Need and, you know, people involved don't realize. When we first started out and I went out and spoke in public, you know, I got the most insulting comments from guys. You know, they would say things like, oh, the wife goes and complains to Carol, and Carol goes and bashes the guys up. And, you know, but so to me, it wasn't hurtful. I just took it as almost kind of ignorance. Or were they actually a beater? Because it seemed to offend them that I was bringing to light a topic that should have been discussed, right? So that was my kind of thinking at the time. So it's in every sphere, Kamini. And, you know, my physio, I was at my physio today, and she said, my husband is cooking for me, and she's pregnant, right? She said, my husband is really good. He cooks and makes the juices for me. And I said, you got a wonderful husband. Not that you want your husband cooking all the time, but it's like an equal share of duties, right? She said, he works as a nurse, so he's at home part of the time, and he makes sure that I'm comfortable when I go back after a long, hard day. You know, Fuzzy, how is it that women, so like I told you about Women in Need, you know, I had to have what they call a thick skin, or even find it all irrelevant to the bigger picture. That's what it was. So my bigger picture was we needed a place that women could go to if they were abused, right? So that was my bigger picture. So all these comments I heard on the side really were irrelevant. Right? But Fazana, how is it, even in the workplace, how do women deal with this kind of sometimes over sexism? You know, apart from having to work harder, how do they do that?
Well, in my experience, I have always pounced and reacted, me being me, if I actually use it in a way of not confrontation, but as education moments. So I have, I think, educated thousands of men in even the simple comment they make, right? You know, badua, kala, the way they refer to women. So to learn to respect, and I remind them that they came from the womb of a woman, a mother, right? And I ask them, don't you have sisters? And you'll someday be a father to a daughter. And those things give them a, you know, strong sort of comeback. And over the years, I think they have, my close acquaintances have learned to understand and appreciate what I was saying. Also, I think just to add to the discussion, women, as you all should agree, in the corporate world should also know their onions, be thorough in what they do. And then they would naturally earn respect from the men. And I think that's what Kasturi is. That's what like most of the strong women in boards and in CEO level are, because they've come there not by knowing someone politically or not by any favors, because of their own merit. And then it's a very hard place to shake.
Yeah, you know, Fazi, I do construction, I do project management on construction sites. And it's, people say, how did you know about construction? I didn't, I taught myself, right? And I had to deal, so my strong point was management. So I felt like if you can manage, you can manage anybody, right? And so it was easier to work with these people, the workers and the, you know, masons and whatever, because I could deal with managing them. And what I didn't know, I taught myself, as Fazi said, you can't wing it. You have to go and study it, right? Fazana, as always, Fazana has, not Fazana, sorry, Kyra always has pearls of wisdom for us. And so I said to her, can you please talk today about, you know, how women can channel their inner strength. And you know, Kyra is a mindfulness and meditation teacher. She was a bhikkhuni for 15 years. So she has, you know, had, I think, a lot of time self-reflection, which we were talking about previously. And so when she comes out with something that's really, really interesting, and obviously it's a well thought out idea. So Kyra, tell us something about how we channel our inner strength.
Thank you, Carol. I've been so enjoying listening to everyone this evening. I always learn so much from each of you. I think what's important for me in looking at how we can really feel confidence in ourselves as women is to really believe in ourselves. I mean, one of the things that I find so powerful about the Buddha's insight when he became enlightened was that everyone has the capacity to become awakened. And his insight was, everyone has this, but they just don't know it. So we're sitting, each of us, on this incredible potential, and as women especially, an incredible potential to not just awaken for ourselves, but to be part of an awakening of our humanity around the illusions of gender. So there's a whole way in which all of us, men and women, can be asleep, right? Because to wake up means you're no longer in this trance of believing in, you know, these beliefs about men being superior, which are so deeply embedded, even in women, that we're not even aware that as women, we are holding ourselves back. right? It's a kind of internalized oppression. And so to me, the promise of awakening that is each of our birthright and innate, potential is also to really step into this confidence that whatever if part of it is we have to learn to listen in and see what it is we want. Sometimes I think women have been so conditioned to accept what it is that others want of them that we haven't even asked ourselves what do I really want for my life? What do I really want to do with this one wild and precious life, as the poet Mary Oliver says? This life is so precious, it will pass so quickly, but we can get so preoccupied in all of the outer things that we have to accomplish or everyone else's expectations of us that we don't actually get in touch with what is it that I want. And I've asked women this. I've asked women, what is it that you really want? And so many times I've heard, I don't know. I haven't actually asked myself this question. I haven't taken myself seriously enough. I haven't valued myself enough to ask what it is that I want, right? Because once we get in touch with what that is, the confidence piece is to really know that we can do that. That if we hold that as a real, I talk about it as if you don't make really clear for yourself what you really want, the universe can't find you to help you. You need to have an address for things to come to you energetically. And that address is getting really clear about your intention, what it is you want for your life. So if I would share like maybe one thing that we could each do as women, but also as men who love women is, for the men, ask the women in your life, what do you really want? How can I support you to really accomplish this? And for the women to really ponder, what is it that I most deeply want? If I were to die in 6 months, what would I really want to focus on between now and that date of my death? And then we need to orient our lives so that we start to really claim that now. Carol.
Thanks, Kyra. So, Selvi, how is it? Selvi, I'd like you to say something here. Please feel free to step in.
I think Kyra's point is absolutely fantastic. Beautiful point. And in this one, I would just like to add that when they're looking into themselves, they need to understand women should not have the victim mentality. They should properly understand that they have the power, and also they are actually co-creating their futures. And they don't understand that. They feel that, everything is coming from outside. The husband is saying this to me, my father is saying this to me, my brother is doing this to me. No, they are actually co-creating it with these men around. And so if they know that they are doing it, then they are in a much better situation to steer it in a way that is actually giving them the self-esteem and giving them the empowerment. That co-creation responsibility they have to take.
Yeah, thanks, Selvi. I mean, that's very well put. What Kamini talked about is so important as well, this the violence that is perpetrated. But we as females, we can, if we are stronger mentally, I think we are able to go to where we want to go, search for what we want in life. And not all of us want to be superhuman or, super moms or whatever. There's a space for all of us, right? So if you're more positive in your thinking, as Kyra said, you can attract good energies to you. I always talk about this. If you're always worrying about what you don't have and what you can't do and whatever, maybe these negative thoughts create negativity around you. So for the women, one piece of advice I'd like to give is believe you can and be positive and believe that anything is possible. So sadly, on that note, I think we are coming towards the end of our forum. Kamini, would you like to say something before we go on to Saraya?
No, it's just that I wanted to emphasize the importance of you know, when you're talking about the real issue of women being silenced and attacked by men, especially in the workplace and those forums, I think women really have an important role to play to stand up for each other. I've seen even if women do speak out, they can be further victimized. People don't believe them, or people will not give them the adequate support that they require. And once you, I mean, women have an important role to create that space for women to be able to speak out, like you did with Women in Need, right? But in the workplace, it is so complex, for example. And in the political sphere, you know, how many women speak out when you see another woman being, you know, ridiculed or, you know, sexualized or being subject to misogyny, right? And I think, you know, we're 50% of this world. I mean, surely, like, I mean, Me Too came along, and that's how, you know, you could even have these kind of, you know, larger conversations. But, you know, we are so much more powerful. And we really need to pull that, and we really need to understand how complex these issues are, and how much, like, say, for a woman who has had this experience, it really breaks you down mentally, right? And, you know, a lot of people, including women, and we see this in the CARE study on masculinities, how women blame women for being raped or being abused. Okay, so that also has to change, and that's one of the key things I want to say.
You know, Kamini, most often when you are in these situations, it's often the men keep quiet. If a man is bullying another woman or saying something sexist or whatever, men keep quiet. It's often a woman who would speak out. But like you also said, some women look at you and think, oh, maybe she deserved it. So this kind of, you know, Fazli had mentioned, you know, about awareness. You know, you really have to think about what we are meant to do on this earth. And to the men, I appeal to you, if you see anything out there that is untoward and something you wouldn't want happening to your mother or your sisters or your wife, please speak out. Have the courage to do that, because the only way we can change this mindset and the culture, as Fazli said, is to go there, for the men to go there. On that note, Soraya, you want to give us a call for action before we close down?
Wow. Yes, absolutely privileged to do that. Listening to all my fellow panelists, you know, I'm blown away. The rich ideas, if we can just implement one a day. I think for women, we have forever defended ourselves, and we have not had the opportunity to define ourselves. So in that regard, women know our stories matter. So we have to find a place and a way to share our stories, because what we have been doing, our better has not been our best. Now, I was looking at Kasturi Chelaya's Chellaraja, right? Chellaraja, her Twitter handle. She says she's passionate about building a united Sri Lanka. I mean, here's a woman who has gone to the highest of her career and achievements, not only in a professional, even in her personal life. And she talks about building a united Sri Lanka. And we wisdom women, we come here every Wednesday, we talk about ideas, but our final goal is to contribute to building a movement of Sri Lankans who will stand up every morning and ask, what have I done for today for a united Sri Lanka? So on that note, I invite everybody to take that question very seriously. You can be that change. So united Sri Lanka is our final goal. Empowering women to arrive at that goal is our roadmap. Thank you.
Thank you. And Fazli says, you know, let's start in our homes. I think that's a brilliant idea. With our homes, with our friends, you know, we will actually go there and find that it will become much more comfortable for everyone to speak out and on behalf of each other. So to the women out there, you had some real good ideas, and to the men out there, you know what you can do to support us. We are 50% of the women. Women are 50% of the world, or more actually. And so together we can achieve so much, empower the women, and we will push to have a united country, because that is in the betterment for all of us, right? So with that, we come to the end of our forum today. This is, I think, our 11th forum, guys. We are on podcasts, we are on Facebook live streaming, we are on Instagram, all our links are on our Facebook page, Wisdom Wednesdays. Please, if you miss, one thing you can do for us is share this, because we want to grow this movement organically. And I think you can help us with that, you know, if you believe that what we are standing for is correct. Our next show is going to be on the 22nd of July. This month we have 5 weeks. So it'll be 22nd of July, and the next one will be the second week of August. Please join us then. Stay safe. We are still through COVID. Be responsible. Wear your masks. You know, try to be physically distant. Good night, and bless you all. You know, from all of us in the panel, we say bye. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Carol.